live with Kai Dyno. Nice to meet you, man.
Yeah, nice to be here. Thanks.
We actually haven't met in person, like I just said. You reached out to me on Instagram talking about your book that just came out, the Vegan Handbook, is it called?
Yeah, the Vegan Handbook. The hemp means it's about health, environment, morality, and pragmatism.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So, as far as veganism, how did you even get started with that? When did you get started with that? Like, let's start with that.
Yeah. So, I, like most people, I saw the documentaries. I saw a lot of the Netflix specials, like What the Health. One big vegan activist, Gary Yavolsky.
Right.
He's really big. He has like a really big famous speech on YouTube about veganism, and he goes just all into it. And I saw it one day, and I was like, wow, this makes so much sense to me, you know. And then from there, I started, looking into it, deciding if I could go into it or not. You know, me being a guy and all my friends work out all the time, and they're all about like, hey, like you need to eat meat, you need to eat all these products to get bigger, to get strong, to be a man and all that stuff. So I was like, I like going against the grain,
right,
and seeing like different things. So I was like, you know what, I'll try it out just to like see like what it's about.
Sure.
Yeah. So I mean, I didn't go vegan like overnight. This was about like 9 years ago, and from there I decided like, all right, let me give up. I gave up fish first, salmon and stuff like that, and then I started giving up more products, chicken and meat, and then eggs and all these products, and eventually gave up cheese. Like most people, cheese is the hardest to give up.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
I love cheese.
Cheese, yeah, definitely. I mean, now luckily there's a lot more products, like a lot of vegan cheeses, a lot of vegan meats, a whole bunch of things. So
right.
They're getting there. They're not as good. They're a lot better than they used to be. But there's a lot more products out there. So
okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. As far as like getting bigger and whatever else, I guess in your take, you're probably like, yeah, I don't necessarily need it to get bigger. I can shred and eat healthy and be fit in that style as opposed to being a bodybuilder type. What else I found funny was most people that go vegan, I feel like they start with like the chicken and the eggs and the cheese, and they move to fish. I'm kind of speculating just on the people that I know that have done it.
Right.
I feel like fish is like the last step, but
right.
You kind of did it the opposite way around.
Yeah. I mean, I did it the opposite just because like I don't know, for some reason I just gave up the fish first. It was just,
I don't think that there's any set way to do it. That's not what I meant. From my familiarity with it, like
right.
That's I know that people will like be pescatarian so that they don't eat like the meat, but they're still they're in like limbo of like being good, but also you're still kind of eating meat in some sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Now that you say it like that, absolutely, yeah. A lot of people give up meat and then become pescatarian, then vegetarian. For
exactly.
Example. Yeah. But yeah, for me it was the opposite. So,
and as far as like the pescatarian is concerned, like, do you feel like what's the moral like indifference with that? Like, because you're still killing something, you think that is really the reason that you shouldn't have it?
Yeah. So like, I mean, there's a lot of studies that show that fish, for example, they feel pain, they feel suffering, and they're animals just as well. So they have the ability to suffer, and we're when we eat fish, we're basically destroying the oceans, right? We're catching all these fish, and we're not just catching fish as well. When we have these nets, we're also bringing in dolphins, bringing in whales, and there's a lot of byproduct in the fishing industry, and it creates a lot of like waste.
Right.
So I think over 90% of our fisheries are depleted. So we're overfishing, we're consuming way too much of this product, and for no reason. I mean, fish have a ton of mercury in them. They have a ton of dioxins and chemicals in them that we're polluting the ocean. The same chemicals that these factories dump into the rivers that eventually go into the oceans, those fish are taking that in, and then we're taking that into our bodies as well.
Right.
And the reason most people eat fish, I think, is because of protein, but I think also like essential fatty acids and stuff like that, like the omegas and stuff like that. But people don't realize is that a lot of the fish get their omegas from eating seaweed and eating like the coral, the plants from the oceans that give them the omega acids, the fatty acids.
So you could bypass the fish and just take in those itself and get what you're getting out of the fish anyway.
Exactly. So that's what I talk about in pragmatism and practical veganism, that instead of like going this extra step and you cut the middleman out, right? You say, hey, like, I'm not eating the fish anymore. I'm going straight to the source instead of like going through the fish that are eating other fish and eating other fish. So, and you're not just getting the omega-3s or the protein from the fish, but you're getting all these other toxins along with that.
Right.
So it's like, why just get it from the source, you know? That's
yeah, no, that makes sense. I think that a lot of people eat fish too. I mean, especially like, you know, fishermen or anybody who goes fishing per se, you know, like even as an activity, it's like an age-old thing, you know, like people have been doing it since like hunter-gatherer type shit, and like I guess to live through that, it's like you feel like you're really being like authentic within like nature. But I do see what you're saying as far as obviously like all that comes with like, you know, people overlook the negatives to it and what you're putting into your body, and the fact that, like you said, not only are you messing with the ocean itself, but there's a depletion of fish at this point in time. So, I mean, at this point, you know, in that sense, you kind of have to consider the negatives to it as opposed to just, you know, I'm going fishing because it's cool, and, you know, I'm going to bring home dinner for the family and whatever else, you know what I mean? So I think that's something that people don't acknowledge and don't even really know. But as far as me, like, I don't really go fishing. I think that it is a cool concept, but I think that if I were to go fishing, probably just throw it back because...
Like catch and release.
Yeah, exactly, because I feel like that is more like the activity than like... I mean, and a lot of people disagree with me because, you know, they say like, you know, catch it, bring it to the shore, clean it off, and immediately eat it. But like you're saying, you're cleaning it off, but that shit is still within the fish, the mercury, whatever else. So
yeah, and a lot of the toxins like the mercury and the PCBs and all these dioxins that are they get stored in the fats, right, of the animals. So like when people say, oh, I'm gonna eat fish because it has omegas and fats, like you're eating that, but along with that you're eating the toxins as well. Yeah, you know, and that's a health aspect to it. But then there's also like the morality, like the, you know, fish are social, like they're animals, they're feeling pain, like they want to live a life, you know. So but even though, like, you know, we've been doing it for such a long time, and like, you know, like it feels like, oh, I'm gonna go get food and hunt and like do fishing, like it's still, you need to look at like the fish, like their life. You're coming into like their habitat and ripping them out. And
right, but what's the difference between us doing it and then like bears doing it? Because we're conscious of what we're doing. Right. We shouldn't do it, as opposed to you can't communicate it with a bear and they need to eat. So
yeah, I think Mark Twain said it. Like he said that, like, you know, man is like the intelligent of the animals, right? He has the ability to conscious to reason, but yet the fact that he causes pain and suffering and does all these things, and you know, like what gives him the right to do it? And just because, you know, a bear might do it doesn't mean that we should do it. I mean, if we use our morality based off like what other animals do, then, you know, we'd probably be like okay to kill each other, right? Okay to rape, okay to like do a whole bunch of things. Like I think, you know, lions also they kill their own cubs sometimes. The male will kill the other cubs as competition to sleep with the female. Right. So like, could you imagine some guy saying in court like, oh, I'm gonna kill like the kids of this mother so that I can sleep with her? Because lions do it. Yeah. You know, it's
no, like, of course, that makes total sense.
Right. You know, we have this intelligence, right? We say we're more intelligent than animals. That's why we're more superior to them. But yet, why aren't we using this intelligence to say, hey, like, let's just leave them alone to live a natural life? You know, maybe they might get killed in the wild or killed in the wilderness by other animals, but, you know, that's them. Like, let's live our life. We don't have to contribute to that, right? If we saw, for example, another example is like if we saw in the playground like these bullies beating up this kid, we'd be like, oh, like this just happens. Like, let's, you know, it's okay to beat up kids or okay to like do all these things because bullies do it. So, you know, in reality, we're not even eating the carnivores, right, that eat other animals. We're eating the defenseless ones, the herbivores, the deers, the cows that wouldn't harm us.
I was just about to get to that too. Deer is another, and I mean, deer, they're overabundant in that sense. I mean, like fish, you can say is depleted, but as far as like fish, deer is concerned, there's way more than, I guess, because they just keep reproducing in certain areas at least, where if hunters don't come in and do it, then the government apparently will come in and kill off a certain amount of that. So I mean, like, in that sense, I get what you're saying. Like, we're going for the ones that like won't do shit to us, or like, you know.
Right.
But trying to remember what my point was on that. Basically, regardless, there's still some sort of hunting out there where like defenseless animals. I can't speak right now. Defenseless animals are going to still be harmed, and I mean, in that sense, I feel like, you know, there's a fine line between what you can and can't prevent in people's heads. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, your other argument totally makes sense as far as the fish. You know what I mean? Like, all of the negatives to it. Trying to blame something that like an animal does, that makes a lot of sense. But like, when there's an overabundance and you don't really have a choice where it's going to be done regardless.
Right.
I see that to some sense, but I still don't agree with the fact that like a life form is being killed just because, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like 50-50 for me in that sense. And I definitely don't condone. I'm not a hunter or anything like that, so I don't want you to think that is why I'm saying that. It's just more or less like, if I were a hunter and I woke up one day and was like, all right, you know what, deer, I'm not going to do it anymore, or any hunting. Like I said, the government will still come in and hire, you know, a hunter or whatever to come and eliminate X amount of this type of species. You know, I mean, I just feel like at that point in time, you know, like there's just, even if you get everyone in the world to be on board, there's some group that's still going to fuck it up. And, you know, we're never going to be perfect.
I get what you're saying. You're kind of saying like, like overpopulation of a species in somewhere. So hunters come in and they say like, oh, okay, like there's too many deer, or there's too many like rabbits or something, and we need to come in and control the population, right? But I mean, if you look at it like what happens when we try to step into nature and control populations, we end up making things a lot worse.
Yeah.
But even if we were trying to do something good and say, oh, there's overpopulation of a certain species, I mean, could you imagine someone saying that about humans? Like, oh, well, humans are overpopulated. Let's let it okay to just kill off a certain amount of humans. Like, or would that be okay if we were overpopulating the earth? Would it be okay to kill humans?
Who's to say the leaders of the earth aren't actually doing that?
Right.
You know what I mean?
But,
I get what you're saying.
Yeah. Do you think? Would you agree to that?
No, absolutely not.
So, well, why not? Because if humans were overpopulated, wouldn't you be like, well, we need to reduce the amount of humans. Let's just kill off 10% of humanity. But you wouldn't say that, and it's because like you're part of the species that is controlling, right? This is called speciesism.
Of course.
So when you're part of the group that like you say, oh well, this species is okay to kill because they're not human. But if like some aliens came from outer space and were like, man, these humans are messing up the planet, like we gotta like wipe them out and to save the planet, you'd be like, wait, no, like don't wipe us out, like we'll change, like stop.
Yeah.
Right? It's the same thing. Like when a superior species comes in, it's okay when you're the superior species. But when you're not, like if you were that deer, you'd be like, no, like okay, we're overpopulating, but like, can you do something else besides kill us?
Yeah.
Like you gotta look at things through the eyes of the victim, right?
Of course.
That's the issue with like hunting and stuff like that. That like we think like, oh, okay, like we're trying to control we're trying to do something good. I get like we're trying to do something good because there's overpopulation and you don't want to mess up the balance. But usually nature will balance itself out, right?
Yeah.
The reason things are probably unbalanced is because something we did, something messed up. We messed up something around the line. Maybe we created like some factory somewhere where the deers got misplaced, and they can only stay in one area, so they overbreed in that one area, right? So instead of us like coming in and say, hey, let's kill them all, let's say, hey, all right, well, let's stop them from breeding too much, and let's give them more space, and let's see what's the real issue, and let's let nature take over and control itself, you know.
But how do you do that? Do you relocate them? Like,
I mean, I don't really know. It's hard because like to say that what we should do, like when we relocate certain species, we end up making things worse. I think certain events have happened where we've relocated extinct species and we put them in certain areas, and they've overgrown and we can't take it back now, right?
Sure.
So I don't know what the answer is, but I think that like just straight killing them is a simple solution to a more complex issue.
Of course.
Right. So like we should just step back and say, hey, like let's think of a more humane way to approach overpopulation of a species instead of just like wiping them out.
Yeah. No, that is definitely a good point. And again, I definitely don't support, you know, the hunting and killing of most animals. I mean, people will probably shit on me for this, but I mean, I don't think it's right either. You know,
Yeah.
I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate in the sense that,
Okay,
like,
yeah.
I want to know if, say, I was a hunter. You know, I want to have the other side of the argument. You know, but again,
Yeah.
for me, like, I completely agree with what you're saying,
Yeah.
and not that I'm vegan or anything like that, but I definitely understand why, number one, you are vegan, and why a lot of people are vegan, and the whole concept of it, because I mean, you really are doing something good for the world. It's not like you're
Right.
the environment and for yourself. You know, it's only positive benefits. You know, pretty much. I had pulled up this list of the pros and cons of going vegan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, definitely.
I don't know how legit the source is, self.com. So
I mean, what?
who the fuck knows? But as far as, like, you know, promoting like a healthy diet and shit, like, obviously a pro. I mean, I saw some of your pictures on Instagram where you're like on waterfalls and shit, and I mean, like, you look ripped, you know,
Yeah.
because you're not eating all the shit and, you know, cheese and all these meats and whatever else. I mean, like, I remember I also saw in one of your videos you were eating like some like salad chip tortilla thing, like, I mean, like, shit like that. Like, you can still eat good without starving yourself. You know what I mean? When I think of vegan, I'm like, oh shit, like, there's no options. But it
Yeah,
seems
absolutely.
like that was a thing maybe like 20 years ago. Maybe I'm even exaggerating there, but
Even closer to that.
in
Same.
2019, vegan is like a totally different thing. Like, me and you talked about, they had that Vegan Dale festival last
the
year.
Vegan Dale, yeah.
I mean, like, it's obviously catching on to the, you know, to the general public that more and more people are like, you know what, this is a good idea, and I do want to do good for, you know, the environment and for myself, and not kill innocent, you know, animals and destroy the, you know,
Destroy the environment. Yeah,
environment.
I
You
think
know what
like
I mean?
yeah, there's a huge misconception with like what's vegan. Like like okay, like you're vegan. Well, what do you eat? And it's like it's a real question, and it's like and people don't really get that, like, you know, a banana or like some pasta, like, you know, you're eating certain foods, and these are just plants. Like, whatever's a plant, like, it's vegan, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't get that, and like you said, like 10 years ago, you didn't have a lot of the faux meats, the vegan meats, the cheeses, the dairy, the plant milk, which has really been taken off a lot.
Yeah.
There wasn't as many abundance of it as there is today.
Right.
So that makes it a lot easier for people to say, okay, well, like, you know, I'm not gonna eat the dairy, and then I'll just switch to the plant-based milk. Or, you know what, I like the taste of meat, but there's meat substitutes like Beyond Meat, Impossible Burgers, or, you know, they're coming into Burger King now too.
Bear Burger.
Yeah, the Bear Burger.
Yeah.
Yeah, even Burger King is gonna have.
I saw that too. That I mean, like, that's awesome that even fast food, where, you know, it's considered just shit junk food, now they're even making a conscious effort to, you know,
to
spread the good,
Right.
you know,
Because
word and
it's taking off.
make people healthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
obviously, if people that are vegan see that, it's like, all right, I'm on like a long road trip and I have nothing to eat. Oh shit, Burger King has those, you know, Impossible Burgers or whatever you call them. Like, that's huge. You know, I mean, like, you can keep up with your diet. You don't have to go at, you know, that's
Right.
another thing I was saying. Like, it's not like it's hard to get your hands on this stuff at this point in time. It seems like it's more and more
Accessible.
spread where you can just
Yeah.
get it anywhere at most supermarkets and shit,
Right.
which is cool. I mean, again, like,
And
things
yeah.
things that drove people away from doing it, I feel like, were the limited options. And like you were just saying, the fact that there's any type of like fruit and vegetable, I might be, you know,
Right. Well, that's the issue too. Like, well, for example, with Burger King, a lot of it is a lot of the Impossible Burgers that are coming out is more for people who are meat eaters who want to try something different or want to eat something healthier or something that's not, you know, a meat substitute.
yeah, I definitely want to try it.
Yeah, definitely. So that's a lot. That's a big step for people who have never even been introduced to. You don't even know what like vegan is, or like, oh my god, like I never thought like this can taste just the same. Like, you know, the same price, the same everything.
Yeah, I will say, when I was at that Vegan Dell Festival last year, I even told you this on Instagram,
Yeah.
but I got this like spare rib hero that I waited online for an hour for, and it was like ridiculously expensive. It might have just been the fact that it was at that, you know,
Yeah, when
festival or
festivals,
whatever.
yeah.
But it was not to my liking, and
Yeah.
like the guy that I was with who's vegan was like, no, dude, trust me, like this, I even tried it, it sucked, but like there's really good vegan food. Like,
Yeah. That's
you
what I
just-
say. Same
He's
thing.
like, you just had something that wasn't good.
That wasn't it. Yeah, I mean, just like anything. I mean, you go to any store that offers meat or cheese, or you might say, "Oh man, this sucks." Like, you know, you're gonna find vegan food that's like terrible. That's really not that good.
Exactly. The more experience you have with it, the
Right.
more you might, get acquainted with it and actually like it.
Yeah, exactly. And then the more you stop eating these products, the more you might, when you're vegan, you kind of forget how meat or egg or other stuff tastes. So your taste bud also changes. Your bacteria, your microbiome, all that changes. So like your taste buds might be different too. So
Right. That's really interesting. What I was going to say was, have you had any like meat since you've gone vegan to the point, like where people will like slip up and they'll have meat and then they get really sick from it?
Yeah. Actually, no. There was this one time where like a year in, I decided to like just try. Like there was a piece of chicken that was like being thrown away that was not going to be used, and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try it, like just to see like how I feel, like what's my reaction. I'm not paying for it. It's gonna be thrown away, so like why not? So I actually tried it and I got sick. I mean, I know this doesn't happen to some. This is anecdotal evidence. This is just my experience with it. So I'm not gonna say that if you go eat meat again that you're gonna throw up and be sick. But I tried the piece of chicken and I got sick and like I threw up. I threw it up and it was just. Yeah, so definitely, like, I'm not having this anymore.
Yeah.
So to me, what I thought was that, like, I was thinking that, like, my body had changed. Like, when you become accustomed to eating something or doing something, for example, like, if you smoke cigarettes all the time, right, you can smoke or do something and it doesn't affect you. But once you stop for a while and then try to go back, you're gonna cough. Like, if your body adapts to and becomes normal to not smoking cigarettes. And the same thing happens, well, at least in my opinion, to eating meat. So you've been accustomed to eating these meats or these dairies for a long time, and then when you stop, then you try to go back. To me, I feel like you're just gonna end up, throwing up or. Well, that was my experience.
No, of course. I mean, and all the processed things that they put in these meats and whatever else. That you don't know what's in it, I feel like that's a huge part of it too.
That's a huge part,
The
definitely.
fact that you're eating all these pretty much pure things, you don't have to
Right.
worry about that shit at all because it's like, all right,
Yeah.
well, I know where my thing came from.
Yeah.
But I was going to say something else about that. Do you feel like after a certain amount of time, like getting all that shit out of your system, like you are more clear-headed and like you can kind of like do you feel like the effects in your body as well?
I think when I stopped eating the meat, I think I felt that effect. I think now I've been balanced out. It's been such a long time.
Sure.
But I think like when I gave up dairy, especially when I gave up cheese, like cheese I think is one of the biggest parts that like gave me so much energy and changed me like drastically. Like I don't think we'd understand the effects of like how bad like dairy is for you and how bad like these products are for you. Like there's so many bad things that's in dairy, chemicals, pus, all these products that like we consume, and then we age it, we make it worse by like turning into this moldy, cheesy thing, which we become addicted to because of the casomorphines that our body produces when we consume the dairy or consume the cheese. So yeah, and when you were talking about like processed meats, like for example, the World Health Organization, when you go onto their website, this is not a vegan organization, this is the World Health Organization, who they classify processed meats as a level 1 carcinogen,
Oh my
right?
God.
So it's in the same category as like plutonium or other things. And this is not like, processed meats maybe cause cancer or is a correlational. This is causational, and it's super hard to prove causation, right?
Yeah.
So this is one of the biggest bodies of health in the world, organizations in the world, and they're classifying like not necessarily all meats, but processed meats, and this includes like bologna, hot dogs, even chicken, for example, can be called processed meat. So when you buy chicken from a store, you're buying a processed meat. So you're buying a level 1 carcinogen, and you're putting this into your body, and it's like, it's not good for you. It's not good. So
course.
like, I don't know. It's just
I had no idea about that. I mean, obviously, I know, like they say, like red meat is horrible for you and whatever else. And obviously, I I considered like the rest of, chicken and whatever else is, somewhat bad too, but I didn't realize that it was to that extent, especially to be on such a legitimate website that has nothing specifically to do with veganism.
Right? It's not even a website. It's it's a body of organization, like the United Nations, like the World Health Organization. This is like all the countries combined, like putting their research together and coming up with studies and deciding that, hey, this is a level 1 carcinogen.
So how do you feel then about like something like the FDA allowing people to consume shit like this when knowing fully that it is a level 1 carcinogen or whatever,
Well, I mean, it's hard because like the U.S. government is funded by like the meat industry, the dairy industry. We spend so much money on lobbying the meat. That's another part of like why meat is so accessible and is so cheap. That's why you can go into the middle of nowhere like Nebraska or Kansas and you can find a Burger King, you can find a KFC, right? And you can buy some chicken for $3 or $4, right? But why can't you find organic vegetables at these places, right? Why can't these are farmlands, but you can't find anything healthy, but yet you can find these cheap meat products, and it's because the system is set up that way. The system is set up to get you to consume these products because we're spending our tax dollars on making these products cheaper and more accessible, and it's making people sick. And then who profits off the sickness? The hospitals, the pharmaceutical companies that are, I think it was Bayer who bought Monsanto.
I was just about to bring that up after. That was a huge one, too.
Think about the craziness that you're saying a pharmaceutical company is buying a chemical company that makes, the weeds, the chemicals to the seeds that grow crops. And who's profiting off this? Who profits off people being sick? It's these bigger corporations, the pharmaceutical companies that are lobbying for these tax breaks for meat and dairy. And then when people change, for example, last year, did you know that the dairy industry lost $1.1 billion because people are buying less dairy milk and they're buying more plant-based milks, almond milk, oat milk?
Oh my
They
God.
lost $1.1 billion. And you know what happened? The U.S. government stepped in and gave them $1 billion in tax cuts. So
Holy
in reality, they only lost about $100 million, right? But this is what happens. The dairy industry was like, hey, we just lost all this money, and then the government says, oh, okay, well, here's $1 billion.
Government knows how big of a cash cow that dairy,
Cash cow, right? No pun intended.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I didn't even mean that, but you know what?
Yeah.
I like that. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously they have their back because, like you said, it's a business. Everyone kind of helps each other out and washes each other's hands.
Right.
Government makes money. Hospitals make money.
Right. People, like, if there's no sick people, you think hospitals are going to be able, pharmaceutical companies. I mean, think about if everybody was eating a plant-based diet, how many illnesses would be reversed? How many people would no longer be sick? I mean, people talk about like people getting sick on a vegan diet. Well, look at any hospital. Who's the majority of people in the hospital? Are they vegans?
Yeah.
Or are they people who consume meat, right? They're people consuming meat and consuming dairy, all these products that people are promoting. And have you ever heard, for example, of someone being going to the hospital for a protein deficiency?
No.
Never.
Yeah.
There's not one person who's ever heard of somebody getting sick or getting sent to the hospital because they've lacked protein, right? But this is the biggest, I need meat for protein. I need this for protein. I need these vitamins for protein. Yet everybody who eats meat and consume all these animal products, they're taking multivitamins on top of that. They're taking protein shakes on top of that. And it's like, well, if meat is such a good protein source, if meat is such a high vitamin, a high nutrient source, why are you taking supplements on top of that?
Right.
Why are so many people sick? Why are so many people in the hospital getting cancer, getting heart disease, getting diabetes, getting all these issues? And nobody's really there. When you look at hospitals, there's hardly any vegans, I would say. There's people who go vegan actually reverse a lot of these diseases. We see them. We see people on a plant-based diet eating whole food plant-based vegan diet, and a lot of these diabetes get reversed. A lot of their heart disease get reversed. A lot of these illnesses that people think I need to take pills for, I need to take all these products for, I need to take 10, 20 pills for. If you just change your diet and change your lifestyle a little bit, eat a little bit healthier, then you no longer need any of these things. But are the pharmaceutical companies going to tell you? Are the hospitals going to tell you? If they tell you this, that, hey, you can basically reverse almost all of your illnesses,
they'd be out of business.
Yeah. It's a business, right?
Of course.
When you go to your doctor, is he telling you, hey, you need these medications because he wants to help you, or because he's being told he has to keep his job, right?
Of course.
I mean, we don't want to say that, like, you know, doctors are like, you know,
Corrupt or anything.
but you know, at the end of the day, like, they're working for a hospital, they're working for a business, and their doctors don't have. They have to take about, like, I think about 6 hours of nutritional classes, right? Think about that. How big is nutrition when it comes to health? You're putting stuff into your body 3 times a day. It's becoming who you are. Your doctors have really no education on this.
Now, because veganism has become so big and popular, are there specifically vegan doctors? I'm sure there are.
Yeah. I think there's Neil Bernard. I think he's one, like, if you look at, like, What the Health documentary, or if you look at other documentaries, there's a lot more doctors who are coming out, especially like cardio surgeons. Like, do you know that when they open you up, open your body up, they can tell if you eat meat? They can tell right away because your arteries are clogged.
Completely clogged. That's
right?
Crazy.
They can tell a meat eater from a vegan because they're like, oh, this guy, look at his arteries. They're just full of cholesterol, full of, like, clogged arteries, and that's the insane part.
So my next question then is, if, say they open me up, they see that I eat meat, whatever else, I leave the hospital, I'm healed from whatever I was in the hospital for, and then I go on for the rest of my life to be vegan. Can I reverse can I, like, kind of, like, wash the you know, the arteries out?
Yeah.
Will that kind of, like, if you switch your diet, like, can you reverse the effects of what you've done to yourself? And so obviously it varies, I guess, on person, but, like, I don't consider myself too unhealthy.
Right.
And I mean, I'm sure my shit is still, like, you know, clogged to some extent, because I do eat a lot of meat.
I mean, you telling me I used to eat, like, triple cheeseburgers, honestly, like, you know, so I would say that, like, I don't know what would happen to you. I think from what the studies show, what happens to people when they're sick, when they have a lot of these diseases with clogged arteries and diabetes, that when they go on a whole food plant-based diet and you cut out the processed meat, you start, you know, living a better lifestyle. You'll have more energy, and you can you reverse a lot of the effects. So yeah, probably. Yeah. I would say most likely. Then yeah.
It seems like that would be the case. Yeah. Obviously, because you're not intaking any of that, you know, crap anymore. So I mean, if you're only putting good, you know, natural things into your body, it's only going to positively affect you in that sense.
Right, and there's a lot to health. It's not just, you know, nutrition is a huge big part, but it's the whole lifestyle, it's a whole living part. And when you look at, I don't know if you ever heard of the blue zones. The blue zones, like when they looked at the longest living societies in the world, this guy circled five blue zones where they had the most people who lived over 100 years old. And what they discovered was that the majority of them, I think 95% of their diet was a plant-based diet. You know, I think, for example, in Okinawa, Japan, they consume 1% of their diet was fish, less than 1%, and then less than 1%, another 1% was less than that was meats. So we're talking about like 98% of their diet was plant-based, wow. Right? And what even crazier was that the majority of their food was a sweet potato. I think about 60% or even more of their diet was a purple sweet potato that comes from Japan. But then the rest was like rice and beans and vegetables and seaweed and stuff like that, sea vegetables. But it shows that, like, when you look at other places like the Seventh-day Adventists in California, who are primarily vegetarian, that eat a vegetarian diet. When you look at other places, they're plant-based diets. So in the country in the world where most people are consuming like 60% of their meal is meats, and then you're adding cheese on top, and you're adding dairy on top, and you're mixing it with eggs and all these other products, and it's like, you know, no wonder like we're the sickest America is one of the sickest places.
The most obese country.
Most obese country, right? Yeah. I mean, think about like if everyone ate a plant-based diet where they're eating everything you want to eat. You can eat, you know, meats. You can eat cheeses. You can eat milks. All plant-based. I mean, how sick can people won't really be sick, right, anymore?
Of course.
So I mean, not to say that people won't ever get sick, but like the sicknesses that can be reversed and the amount of illnesses will be limited to like genetic diseases or other environmental factors, not what your diet consists of.
As far as exercise is concerned, like you said, you feel like you have more energy within this diet, but while you're actually exercising, because you still get protein and whatever else.
Right.
Do you feel like you're tired more quickly when you're exercising, or like in comparison to when you were still eating meat?
Right. So, for example, I mean, when you look at a lot of the world's, I think the world's strongest man right now is a vegan, or the world
Wow.
There's vegan bodybuilders that like are out there, and a lot of pro athletes are switching to veganism, and a lot of the misconception about working out is that we need so much protein, right? But when you look at what's nature's superfood? It's human breast milk, right? When you're born, you're to about 6 months of age, you're supposed to drink your breast milk, and you double in size. Drinking breast milk. But did you know that humans have the lowest amount of protein in breast milk than any other mammal? And of that, of what breast milk is made of, only 7% is made from protein.
Right.
But when you look at like carbohydrates and when you look at the fats, they make up about like 30%, a lot more. Like I think it's like 11 grams of protein per like 38 grams of carbohydrates and 33 grams of like fats. So a lot of like what we think we need protein for, a baby is doubling in size. I mean, obviously a baby is not consuming what we do and doing what we do, but they're
Sure.
doubling in size. Where are they getting all the muscles and all the brain mass and all the skeleton muscles to grow double in size? Where's the protein at, right? So
Yeah.
so like for example, like being fit, right, being exercising and stuff like that. I really like you saw me like you said the Instagram, and you saw me like in the waterfalls and all that stuff. I never went to the gym. I never go to a gym. I do a little bit of workout. I do just calisthenics and I just live an active lifestyle.
Right.
And I eat vegan. I eat plant based, and I get like I get really good results from that. And there's a lot of people who are on a plant based diet, who work out and get all these results. And when you look at like in history, for example, did you know that the gladiators in Rome, they were vegetarian. Not that they were not vegetarian, but when they were called to like battle, they wouldn't consume meat because they knew it would hinder their process. They would hinder their ability to fight.
Right.
They were actually called the barley men.
Right.
So they would eat a ton of barley, and they would be like, well, we're not consuming any meat because we don't. These are like the toughest dudes like in history, right?
Yeah.
And these people were like, no, I'm not eating meat. I'm not eating any of these products. I need my plants. I need my vegetables, because that's what's going to give me my energy.
Yeah.
So we had this huge misconception of like protein, when protein is probably like one of the least macronutrients that we need. The body's main source of energy, we're talking about like, do you have a lot of energy to work out and keep going through all these workouts? The main source of energy for the human body is glucose.
Okay.
Right. So what your body does is it takes glucose and it breaks it down to ATP, and that's what that's what we use for energy.
The amino acids.
Right.
Yeah.
From the sugar molecules of glucose.
Right.
It's not the amino acids, because the amino acids is from the protein.
I'm just thinking back on
Right.
7th grade science. Keep going.
Yeah. So when we're consuming, when we looking at food for energy, we're looking at how much glucose can we get from it, right?
Okay.
And then our body is taking that and turning it into ATP. And even our brain cells, our brain consumes about 25% of our energy, and the main source of energy for our brain is glucose. So when we want to work out, we want to have energy to go to the gym, we need glucose. And there is 0 carbohydrates in meats, 0. There's protein and there's fat, but there's no carbohydrates. So when we want readily available energy, we need carbohydrates.
That's why people who are about to run marathons and whatever else, they'll have like a big pasta meal.
Yeah, pasta. Yeah, carbohydrates,
the night
right?
before or whatever. Yeah.
Right, because that's where the glucose is. They're gonna get that.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Yeah.
Right.
Instead of just all these juice heads that are going to the gym and shaking their protein
right?
shakes, and they have no idea what the hell's in it.
Yeah, no idea.
And what it's actually doing for them. It's more just a fad to follow, by, because everybody sees everybody else doing it.
Right.
I mean, like, I'm not gonna lie, I've been guilty of it, but
Same here.
at the same point in time, I did it a couple of times, and I'm like, I don't know what this is doing for me. You know what I mean? I feel like I work out better.
You have no idea what's in
naturally.
it.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
if I just drink water and kind of just motivate myself in some sense. As soon as you like get yourself going, maybe I have some glucose in me already that I don't realize, but I
Right.
usually work out on an empty stomach because it just for me it helps me more. I feel like if I eat, then I'm just more sluggish.
Right.
But no, it makes total sense. You know what I mean? Like,
right. I mean, the thing is that people are consuming these protein shakes, and I used to do it too, right? I used to buy the protein shakes. I used to buy all these things that I think like, oh, okay, this is what you need to get bigger protein. But like, you don't know what's in it. This is not FDA approved. Like, it's nonsense in it, right? It's mostly milk protein, which is like has all these chemicals in it.
That whey.
Right, and you're eating something that's been dehydrated into powder form. Yeah. Right, and you're talking about how much protein can it have? It's been burnt down into a powder. It's been like all the water has been taken out. You have no idea if this thing is actually going to give you energy. Maybe for the most part, it's probably just a placebo effect. You take this protein shake, like, oh my god, I'm getting so much energy, and it's mostly the placebo effect to me.
So why is it then that became like the norm for people that are exercising, whatever else? Why did people think that protein is I mean, maybe you can't answer that.
I can answer that. It's definitely it's marketing, right? I mean, you're selling a powder. You're selling basically protein from milk that's overabundant. We're milking milk. There's milk in abundance, especially during the time that protein came out. There's so much milk in abundance. So they say, hey, what we're gonna do with all this excess milk? Let's turn it into a powder and let's say it's a protein shake and let's give it to people and like, oh, and let's get some bodybuilders to market it in Muscle Magazine and all these companies. Throw the money on the table, whatever it is. It's a marketing scheme to get people to take a product that doesn't really do anything for you except give you a placebo effect and think you're gonna get bigger, when in reality it's not that. Yeah,
I always see all these people, when the pre-workout hits and they're all like hyped up, and it's like, I don't know how true that is. You know what I mean? Like you're saying, how much are you really getting out of that, and how much is really just like you said, the placebo effect of, all right, well I took that and maybe I'm a little excited to work out, so I feel it working now. You know what I mean?
Right.
That is that's really interesting, and obviously marketing plays a huge role because money is the root of everything. You know what I mean? Like if it's the same thing with why weed is still illegal in the United States nationwide. Well, because Big Pharma has their hand in the government's pocket, or vice versa, and they're saying, listen, we'll as long as you guys keep taking our prescription drugs, we'll keep giving you money and keeping marijuana illegal, because even though it's been proven that marijuana kills cancer cells and whatever else, it's kind of pushed to the side because they have their agenda of what makes the most amount of money and what's working already. So I mean, I don't know if that's the best example, but that kind of was just on my mind as far as that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's like the whole industry. I mean, they want you to believe that you need to take this product in order to be stronger.
Right.
So
right.
That's pretty crazy. I mean. Like protein, man. It's always protein. It's always protein. People you're like, oh, well, what about protein? What about protein? What about protein? And people don't understand that, like for example, the American Dietetics and the British Dietetics are the largest bodies of scientific studies on nutrition, right? And they all say that a vegan diet, you're gonna get, as long as you're meeting your caloric requirements, you're gonna get everything that you need, right? From whether you're a baby, whether you're in infancy, whether you're a mom breastfeeding. Or whether you're a pro athlete, whether you're working out, you can get every single nutrient, every single essential nutrient that your body needs to be healthy, to function on a vegan plant-based diet. And it's just it just, to me, it just doesn't make sense. Most people shout out protein, but most people don't even really know what protein is. Like the fact that plants have protein. There's a huge misconception where they say, well, plants they don't have complete proteins, right? There's always incomplete proteins. And what people don't understand is that there's I think there's about 20 essential amino acids that your body needs. 20 amino acids that your body needs, 9 of which are essential amino acids that your body can't really break down from other sources.
Okay.
So the 9 that are essential, your body needs to get them from a food source, right? And the other 11, your body can take whatever's left and break it down, but it still needs food to make them. But so there's these essential amino acids. And people say, well, certain plants don't have all the 20 essential amino acids, which is false. The truth is that plants have all the amino acids that your body needs, but they don't. What happens is that a vegetable, for example, will get categorized as an incomplete protein source if it doesn't meet 100% of that of all the amino acids that your body needs. So a protein for a vegetable source can have 120% of the majority of them, but it has one, like let's say lysine, the amino acid lysine or thymine, it has like 88% of it. It'll be like, oh, well, that's an incomplete protein source. And it's like, well, if you just ate a cup more, you'll get you get 100%, you get a complete protein source, right? So it's like this huge misconception. People say, well, and people don't understand that because of the marketing, because it's like, oh, it's incomplete. And people don't really understand what like protein is.
So do they purposely push that?
I don't know if it was purposely.
Serving size wise, or
serving size wise, yeah. So like if you have like a serving size of like let's say kale or something like that, right? And let's say this kale doesn't have like I said 100% of this one or two proteins, but it has 70%, and the other sources it has 120, 130, 110. But of this one or two amino acids, if you just, of that serving size, if you just ate a little bit more of it, you would get the 88% would turn into like, 100%, over 100%.
Exactly. So that's really why I meant like they're almost cheating it, because they know that if you were to add that extra bit of
the extra percent, you would get 100%.
You would meet that requirement, and it'd be fine.
Fine. And there are vegetables, plant sources that have 100%, over 100%, like soybean, for example, has 100% of over 100% of all the amino acids, and there's nuts, there's beans, and all these other things that when you put rice and beans together, they form a complete protein, because there's lysine and thymine, and one of them is missing. They're each missing the opposite from each other, and then they have more of the other, and then when you put them together, they form the complete protein.
Sure.
So when you eat one serving size of both of them together, you'll get 100%. But if you just ate a little bit more of one, then you get all the protein.
That's super interesting. I actually had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't even know it. Until I started writing the book and I started researching it.
So about the book, first off, how did you like learn so much about this? Just research?
Yeah, I mean, I've been vegan. I started the vegan process for about 9 years, and then just talking to people. And last year I traveled to over 20 countries. I was gonna do like a vegan YouTube kind of thing, but like I feel like it's oversaturated. So I decided to I still hear people talking about like, oh, well, what about this? What about that? So I decided to like write a book and put all of my knowledge into one source where people can just be like, oh, okay, and access it.
Right. I mean, I think that's awesome, and it seems like you have a lot of not only good ideas but just factual information that
Yeah, I mean,
can't be disputed, because it's seems like it's just right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to hold this up. I'll hold it up at the end again.
Okay. Yeah. Cool.
But as far as so you have a bunch of different things written on here. It's just kind of like everything that's incorporated within not only the book but the lifestyle of veganism.
Right. Yeah. So I talk about a lot of things like B12. I talk about the history, nutrition. Evolution is a big one, like how the brain developed. People think about certain things. The history of veganism, which is super important. Like people think veganism is a new thing, when in reality, veganism is probably like we were vegan before we even started eating meat, right? Like we were herbivores. Like when you look at our anatomical structure, because everyone would agree that there's a certain point in history when we started to eat meat. Right, so that if we started to eat meat at a certain point, then there's a certain point where we weren't eating meat. That we were,
obviously we were still surviving. So what were we eating? Not meat.
Something
else, plant-based. Foods.
And then I read about here the ancient civilizations. When you look at a lot of the Indus Valley civilization or the Egyptian civilization, a lot of they were vegetarians. They were eating plants. They weren't eating meat because meat was so costly. To like why would they also had an overabundance of like farmland, right? So the Egyptians were great farmers because they were in the Nile and they had very fertile soil.
Right.
So they grew all the vegetables. They grew surpluses, actually. That's why they were able to trade and have time to create the pyramids and think about like gods and mathematical equations. They were super smart, right?
Yeah.
How did they do this? Because they had overabundance of farmland, overabundance of plant-based foods, that they were like, you know what, like we have all this time, all this extra energy, let's just look at the stars and build pyramids and stuff like that. And trade with other civilizations, so they got a lot of knowledge from that too. So when they looked at the fossil records or they looked up things, they found that they actually did very little fishing. In reality, they got a lot of their food sources from growing on certain, like it was so fertile, like they would just drop a seed and it would grow because the fertile was so, and it would rain on time all the time and it would flood all the time. So they'd had abundance of farmland.
So do you think that that is really where like the whole veganism derives from, or is it even earlier than that?
I just think that like
That's like the first record of it and such.
I think that like it's easier to find a fossil of an animal in a human's remains, because the bone, than it is to find a fossil remain of plants, right?
Sure.
So I think that yeah, you can find a remain of some human eating a piece of meat, but does that mean that everyone in the civilization back then ate meat? I don't think so.
Of course not.
So
you can't base a result on one given fact.
And if you look at, for example, like the Indus Valley civilization, which is in India, where Hinduism, Buddhism, and Jainism derives, these are the cultures that are mostly vegetarian, that are mostly vegan, that don't consume
totally
meat.
against the killing the cow. I remember watching that movie Bubble Boy, and the guy, the ice cream guy comes out of the truck or whatever, and he's crying because he ran over the bull or whatever, and it's just like. I feel like that was my first exposure to like, oh shit, there's people in the world that don't eat meat.
Yeah.
So, but you were saying anyway, in the Indus Valley.
Yeah, Indus Valley is like one of the oldest ancient civilizations in the world, and a lot of the vegetarian scriptures like Jainism and stuff like that, and yoga and all these things where we shouldn't consume animals come from there. And when we look at, they have the biggest civilization, and they have they have literally no evidence of warfare. They have no evidence of weapons, and very little evidence of like actual like weapons and tools and stuff like that. But zero warfare. That was because they were also like the Egyptians. They had an abundance of food, abundance of resources, and what it shows is that like when you have food, right, when your needs are being met, there's no reason
you're at peace.
You're at peace, right?
Yeah.
You don't need to kill another animal to like get you're growing, or you're living a long life, you're living a healthy life. There's no need for that.
Versus the United States I don't know if this is part of the United States timeline, but at any given time when the United States started, we were always trading with people, and we were limited to, what they had versus what we could have. And if we didn't get what we wanted, it was war, and it was over shit like that, things that you could have just grown and been self-sufficient and, lived a more prosperous and self-indulging life, as opposed to creating all these issues. And beyond that, I mean, for yourself too, health-wise, I mean, you look at the history of this country, I'm sure there's a lot of unhealthy people, just based upon that. It's funny because, like, you have all these different societies, and some kind of figured it out in that sense. Obviously, geographically, it kind of also depends. But, I mean, every region was kind of by water, to some sense. So it's not like you couldn't grow crops and whatever else.
They had flooding, they had all these things. Yeah.
So I just find it interesting that places like you said, ancient Egypt and,
Indus
Valley, like...
even Greek, like they had, Pythagoras?
Yeah, of course.
He, A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
That's the main reason I know him.
Yeah. He was actually he was on a vegan. What they called it was a vegetable diet. Was only vegetables, which is a vegan diet.
Right.
And his followers were the Pythagoreans, and they were also on this vegan vegetable diet as well. This was like 2,000 years ago. They were talking about like beings with a soul. They wrote a book on the absence of eating animals with a soul, right? Yeah. They were talking about how you can't Socrates was talking about how can you go and consume this animal of flesh and all these things. All these people back then in ancient Greece were talking about like, should we be killing animals? Like, if you're such a meat eater, then why are you cooking your food? Why are you cooking it with flames, boiling and adding all these herbs and spices? If you were a natural meat eater, they were saying you should be the same arguments vegans here today. They were debating this 2,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's another thing too. Like you were just saying, when you have to cook your food and whatever else. You're destroying kind of like the environment in that sense too, the atmosphere, and
you're destroying the nutrients in the food, right?
Exactly.
You're cooking the nutrients. And if you were such a carnivore or such an omnivore, then why don't when you see an animal walking, when you see a dog, why don't you have an instinct to just want to kill it, want to eat it, or a bunny, right? Why don't you have this natural instinct to when you see a rabbit, what do you kind of want to cuddle it, kind of want to pet it, right?
Of course.
Yeah, you see a cute cow, you're like, oh my god, it's such a cute cow. You don't think like, oh my god, I'm going to eat this cow.
Of
you
course.
think like, oh, well, let me pet it, let me play with it. We don't have this natural carnistic instinct, right? When you look at our body, if your jaw moves side to side like this, if your jaw goes like that, you're a herbivore.
Yeah.
Right. You're. It's designed to chomp down. Like a carnivore's mouth only goes up and down.
Right.
Right. So if you look at a dog, if you look at a cat, their mouth only goes straight up and down.
It's like bears, like grizzly bears.
Yeah.
Rather. Now, obviously, some bears are only. I think like panda bears and black bears only eat plants. And, I might be wrong about that.
I'm not sure about that either.
But yeah.
But yeah. So if
your point being, the fact that like if you have that ability to do that with your muscles and whatever, like you're obviously meant to be a herbivore as opposed to a carnivore.
There's so much evidence, like even our saliva, right? Our saliva is designed to break down carbohydrates.
Right.
Is there any carbohydrates in meat? No, there's no carb.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no carbs in meat. So our bodies is designed to break down plant carbohydrates. If you look at our stomach acids are way lower than meat eaters, than carnivores. If you look at our intestines, they're way shorter, because they're way longer than a cat or a dog or a lion, because the meat has to travel really quick and get out of your system before it starts putrefying and detoxifying in your body.
Sure.
Right. So we have a longer body, so we can break down the fiber, we can break down the carbohydrates and all these things, and our microbiome can kick in and all this stuff. So when you look at our body, we're herbivores up and down. I mean, people will say that we're omnivores. I think that we're more opportunistic omnivores, where we can go out and we can eat meat if we had to, if we needed to survive. You know, if we said, hey, you know, there's nothing else, we're starving, our farmland has been ravaged by war, or some drought came, like, all right, we gotta, we gotta do something, right, to survive. We can do that. We're opportunistic, right?
Yeah.
But if you look at our body, we're designed, the best way to live is on a whole food plant-based diet. And if you look at even the China study, one of the biggest studies ever conducted, shows that like the optimal diet for human consumption is a diet with no animal products. And when you look at the study, people will say, well, that's this study, that's all these studies, blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, oh, what more do you want? Like, we're giving you the evidence. All the scientific bodies are saying it. Like, well, why? What's the issue, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are just comfortable with where they are, you know, definitely. As far as like, you know, a lot of non-vegan foods, you know, regular. I don't want to say regular because I'm just kind of like saying.
Yeah, it's just part of
the general population that isn't vegan. They have their set foods, like you were saying before, like a burger or something like that. Like people are comfortable with their foods that they love, that they crave, whatever else. So they're not willing to get out of their not only comfort zone, but their kind of consciousness to really explore something that may ultimately benefit them. You know what I mean? And
I think that's absolutely true. I think people follow the path of less resistance, right? Like,
exactly. And I'm guilty of it too.
I'm guilty of it as well, honestly. Like, I may be vegan, but like I'm super lazy sometimes.
Yeah, of course.
It's whatever's available, you know.
Now, when you went on this trip and you were going to 20 countries straight, or you came back and forth?
No, I left and then I came back. So okay. I didn't come back. So I didn't plan to go to 20 countries. I just that's the number I happened to come across. Originally, I was gonna do South America. I was gonna go to Mexico and to Colombia and all this stuff. But I found a really cheap flight. Like flights are like to Europe. I think I found it to Paris for about $150.
Damn.
And I was like, oh, I'm going to Europe.
Yeah.
So I booked the flight to Paris, and I found out that you can stay there for about 90 days before they kick you out. So I booked the flight to go to Paris, and I booked the exiting flight from Europe to Bali. And I was like, man, I always want to go to Bali. It looks so amazing, so cool. So I was like, you know what? All right, let me do that. Let me go to Europe, chill for there for 3 months, and then head to Bali. Yeah. And then I'll figure out where I'm going to go there afterwards. So then when I was in Europe, I traveled to a whole bunch of different countries. I went to Paris. It's not a country, it's a city. But I went to Paris. I went to Barcelona. I went to Lisbon, Berlin, London, Italy. I went to Milan, Rome. I went to all these places, and vegan food, right? You want to know like what vegan food, and vegan food is really big in Europe right now because like it's taken off because they're really big on the environment, and we know that the meat industry is unsustainable, and you can't really feed the world population on meat, on growing cattle. We're chopping down the Amazon rainforest to grow all these products and to grow cattle ranches and to grow soybeans to then feed the cattle with them. That's another issue in the environment. But when you go to London, when you go to Berlin is so vegan friendly. Germany, oh my God, and it's so affordable too. That's the interesting part. That it's like the cost is so low
as opposed to here.
Yeah. And we think that the euro is so expensive, but in Berlin it's so affordable. You go there, they have a vegan market called Vegans. It's like a Whole Foods except a lot cheaper and all vegan, right? They have all the products there have no animal products in them. They're all vegan, 100%. They have a cafeteria in there that's vegan, and it's super cool. And in Berlin, the German people there are so open-minded, so forward-thinking. Like, there's like, oh, you're vegan. Oh, okay. No, everyone understands, like, oh, you're vegan, but I'm not, but we're cool. We can chill. We can hang out, even though we have different views on food, we're cool. Let's just, and that's how it should be. We shouldn't really be judging other people like that.
I kind of have like a 3-part question
All right,
for
cool,
that.
cool. Let me know.
First off is, did you have any issue finding vegan food in any of these countries that you went to?
I would say, I've heard people say that it's hard to travel as a vegan, but since I was doing a vegan blog, so I was actually actively going out and searching these vegan places.
Okay.
But it's super easy because there's a website called Happy Cow. You can go on there and it shows you all the vegetarian, all the vegan restaurants. And then you can go on Google and just type in vegan and they'll all pop up, right? So it was super easy to find vegan options, especially places that don't have, they're offering them because people are asking for them. You go out to eat and you have a vegan friend and they can't eat anything. They're like, oh man, that's money loss, right?
Yeah.
So people are realizing, hey, my money, I can make
being incorporated more and more into every business. Even if it's just 1 or 2 options,
right.
It's something.
It's something, and they're trying to make, not trying to lose business, right?
Yeah. So my second part is, I feel like this this answer kind of relates to the next one. Do you think that the U.S. will ever get to that point where they'll have like a vegans like full like supermarket? I guess they have like Trader Joe's and shit, but I don't know if that's necessarily
right. I don't know. I think they have here in New York. They have here. You go to Orchard Grocers. It's all vegan.
Okay.
Yeah. So they have. It's not as big as a supermarket. It's like a small little grocery store, but it's all vegan, and it's pretty cool that they have that. I think some of the stuff is pretty pricey, and I agree with like vegan options, like vegan meats and stuff like that is pretty pricey. But when you're traveling, honestly, you go and you can get pasta, you can get like rice, beans, you go to all these countries and you can have the same cultural foods without having to like eat the animal products. Just go and you can cook your food to save your own money. But if you want to go out to restaurants, there's definitely a lot of vegan restaurants, and some of them are pricey, some of them are affordable. You just, like with everything, when you go out traveling, you got to plan ahead, right? You go on Pinterest, you go on Instagram and type in, all right, Paris restaurants, good places to eat. And you have a list and you go prepared, and when you're prepared, everything's accessible to you.
Of course. I think like my other kind of question to that was, do you think that the U.S. as a whole will move more towards, because it already seems like it is
right.
moving towards veganism that much more? And I don't mean like as a whole, but I just mean like, do you feel like the movement is just going to keep, spreading? Because it seems like it is.
I would say that's where it should be going to. That's the ideal. But the U.S. has always historically been behind Europe and behind places like Australia and more advanced countries where they ban GMOs and they ban all these products, and then we're like, oh wait, maybe we should ban it too.
Yeah.
So, but honestly, here in America, if you go to a lot of the major cities like New York, you go to California, there's vegan restaurants everywhere.
Yeah.
At least vegetarian everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And when you look at like the app like Happy Cow, a lot of the major cities, they have like even like Dallas, Texas, like they have a ton of vegan restaurants. You have Miami, you have like Chicago, you have all these places where you go, and like Portland and Washington, upstate, there's a ton of like vegan bakeries. So, well, yeah, I think that's the aim, and we're seeing it with what I said, with how the dairy industry just lost $1.1 billion, and
all these other places popping up are contributing to the fact that
eventually,
as it goes up, the dairy sales and products are going down. Yeah.
And we're seeing when Tyson Chicken is talking about creating a vegan chicken, like that's progress being made, and eventually the U.S. government will get tired of bailing out these dairy farmers and these things. So eventually that's what's going to happen. People are going to stop consuming these products, and the government is going to be like, all right, we can't bail you out anymore. This is it. You got to either change your system or do something else with it. And my thing is that like we could do that. Like if we stop subsidizing meat and dairy and take that like I think it's about $58 billion a year that we and we only give like 0.007% of it to vegetables, right? When we talk about farmers are one of the most important people. These are the people that supply our food, right? And we should look after our farmers, right? So my thing is that like instead of giving farmers $58 billion to grow meat, to kill chickens, to kill pigs, to kill, rape and torture all these innocent animals. Let's give that $58 billion to grow greenhouses, right? To grow not monocultures like we do. We grow a ton of wheat. We grow a ton of like corn, right? All these things that could eventually be wiped out or are like so bad for the soil, right? Instead of doing that, let's grow greenhouses. Let's go permaculture farms, right? Where we can grow a ton of different vegetables and a ton of different vegetables from different climates with greenhouses. And like they're doing in the Netherlands, for example. In Netherlands, they have a ton of greenhouses and it's super cold. It's even colder than here, right?
Yeah.
And they grow so much potatoes, so much tomatoes and all these different kinds of vegetables that they're feeding Europe. They're feeding basically the world in a country in a space about the size of New York City. Like that's how much greenhouses they have. That's the size. Imagine you having
wild.
A greenhouse the size of Netherlands, New York City's at every major place in the country, right? You can feed everybody off that, right?
Exactly.
And the amount of resources that it takes to feed cows, to feed all these animals, it takes about like 10 to 16 times more land and food to give to a cow, to give to cattle. Imagine you can be giving that to people, right? You can be growing all these things to people and feeding people with that. So I think that's the way America should be moving towards, and this country should be, and it will be moving towards as people start realizing that, hey, like I can be healthier, I can look better, I can have all these things, and climate change is a real big issue. Like let's stop this climate change, and the animals are suffering as well.
I actually saw this thing. That was a really good point, by the way. I don't mean to change gears, but it's kind of attributing to that. Saw this thing. I don't know if it was on Facebook or Instagram, but basically it said like the world needs to plant more fruit trees so that the homeless people and everyone could, the world wouldn't start.
Exactly.
I'm like expanding it, but like it was just more or less like if there were more fruit trees in the world, then no one would starve and everyone would be healthier or something.
Right.
I'm jumbling what it was, but it that's basically the context of it, and I just thought that was a really good point because like where the fuck are all the fruit trees?
Yeah.
Maybe in like California or something like that, but if you walk around New York. If there were like apple trees and oranges and shit, like I would go and pick them and fucking eat them and walk from the subway and eat an orange, like that's fucking awesome. But like I feel like that's part of like the problem is that like the government doesn't want shit like that, I mean, and not that it makes sense, but that alone I feel like would make a conscious effort to get people more on board with it, and also like there would be less people starving out there too. Right. Bottom line,
it would reduce the cost. It would do a lot of things, and like you said, like you can grow like in the north. They grow apple trees. They grow a whole bunch of like different trees that can grow in harsher climates.
Exactly.
And you can grow that instead of having like cool looking trees that are just serve like or whatever purpose. You can have trees that actually grow food or stuff like that. Or you can have more industries or programs to have a rooftop farming or local farming and stuff like that can grow a bunch of different types of vegetables locally and sustainably, right?
Exactly.
That's the main thing that people have, that like we need to grow more locally and more sustainable and in season, right? So we ship a ton of vegetables, a ton of products from overseas, and it causes a lot of greenhouse gases and it causes a lot of things. So if we're having like I said, like the Netherlands, the size of Manhattan, right? Manhattan is pretty big because it's populated, but the square footage is not that big when you're comparing it to the whole United States. And if you had something like that, and next to every major city in the U.S., like imagine like growing a ton of food with less water, less land, less resources, less greenhouse gases being emitted. And when you're planting more trees, more vegetables, they're consuming more CO2. So we're taking CO2 from the air, so it's carbon negative, right?
Yeah.
And it's more locally, so we don't need to buy products from overseas, from Mexico. We're buying all these things from South America, bananas and all these products, asparagus from all over the world. Instead, we can be growing our own food and feeding our own people, feeding homeless people, instead of taking that same food and feeding it to animals, which then feed it to people, right? How unpractical is that to like to grow 16 times more food so you can feed it to cattle, so then people can eat the meat.
Well, the same way like in the grocery stores too. Just because you're buying fruit and vegetables, you don't know what the hell happened to that stuff before you're buying it, Like, right. I feel like if it was all natural and everybody had their own farms, I mean, I know that's that's a little, I'm reaching a little bit, but...
I don't know if everybody could have their own farms, but at least a farming community within a city, right?
Exactly.
Something close, something locally where you're like, oh, okay. And that's the reason a lot of people don't like vegetables, for example, because they're not picked when they're ripe, right?
Exactly.
You're buying tomatoes, and they're off season, and then they grow them, and then they come green, and then they spray them with ethylene gas to make them red, to make them look like they're fresh, when in reality they're still not even ripe. And people are like, oh man, I hate vegetables, I hate this, I hate that, because it's not locally. If you had a locally sourced organic place, and there's a huge misconception, like if you look online, organic shouldn't be expensive. It should be actually less expensive than conventionally raised, but it's because of the whole industry, the way it's done.
Of
and
course.
locally is even cheaper, because you're not paying for transportation. Transportation is a huge part of like when buying vegetables.
Yeah.
So when you buy locally, maybe not here in New York City, because it's a higher price, but like usually when you buy locally, if you go to farmers, you can get cheaper organic fresh vegetables that were raised by a local farmer. You're supporting local farmers, and you're buying good quality products at a lower price than you would a conventional product from a supermarket, right? That says, oh, it's organic, but like you know.
Right. You mentioned Tyson chicken before.
Right.
I don't mean to keep
Yeah,
like
go
not
ahead.
acknowledging what you're saying. I'm taking it in.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. But I had a thought about that Tyson chicken thing that you were mentioning earlier. They came into some serious heat. I don't know if you remember, like maybe 2 years ago, where there was this video that came out that I'm sure it happened more than once, but when I was paying attention at least, the video got pushed onto Facebook, I believe it was, and it was inside the factory of Tyson chicken, but they also have pigs, I guess, or whatever.
Okay.
And like the pigs were being like completely like I don't want to say demoralized, but like just abused, and like in these incredibly small like enclosed environments, and it was just like it's so cruel. And Tyson is just such a big name that like if I never saw that video, I would go to the store and be like, oh fuck yeah, Tyson chicken, like that shit's bomb, like I'm gonna get that. But
Right.
you don't realize what goes in behind the scenes in that sense too. I mean, like beyond just what's in it, like the cruelty of the actual act of taking a life just for something that you can.
It's unnecessary when you could get it from another source.
Exactly.
A plant-based source
Well,
without causing the harm.
I was just about to say that, without actually killing something,
Right.
where as if like it was put there on purpose for human consumption. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
I would say to that, it's like most people are against like factory farming, right? That's basically factory farming, when you're having these animals in these enclosed cages, and you're just producing them, and you're not treating them well, right? When you show videos, like there's like Voices for the Anonymous that go to Union Square Park, and they wear the mask, and they show the industry, the standard practices, right?
I saw you had posted something on Instagram last week about that.
Yeah, I do a little bit of outreach for that. But the thing is that when you see people walk by, they're like, "Oh my God, this is so bad. This is so bad. Like, oh, it's so bad." But then you go into a grocery and you buy Tyson chicken, and then you're paying for this, right?
Exactly.
And I think there's a huge disconnect, because people will see that and be like, "I would never be a part of that," but then like pay for someone to do it. Whether it's consciously or subconsciously, it's happening behind closed doors. Just because you can't see it, I think we're so disconnected from like the process. And and even still, like a lot of people would disagree with factory farming, but did you know that at least 99% of chicken is factory farm? So whether you're getting it from Tyson, whether you're getting it from some place that says, oh, it's cool and everything like that, it's mostly factory farm, and less than 1% of it is like not. And even of that, like all they had, like free range, all they have to do is just keep one door open, or it's such a loose term that most of the meat that people buy is factory farm, is coming from these places. That people are good people, but they don't agree with none of this. No one likes factory farming, but then people will say, well, as long as the animals are treated nicely, as long as they're given a good life, but none of these animals are. And even if they were given a good life, it still wouldn't. At the end of the day, they get sent to a slaughterhouse either way.
What about? That's a really good point. What about like if I had my own chicken, and I treat the chicken really well.
Yeah, super well.
And it lays eggs. What's the harm in that? You're killing its chicks because you're eating it. That's always confused me. I never understood that, because like if you're not harming the actual chicken itself.
Mm-hmm.
Then
that's a very good question. A lot of people ask that. It's like, well, what if what if I buy it from if I have my own chicken farm and I raise my own chickens and I give them a good life and I just take their eggs from them, right? It's like, well, I'm not harming the chicken. I'm giving them a good life. I'm giving them eggs and stuff like that. And the issue is that when we look at animals as property, right? You say, well, we look at them like, okay, well, they're giving me I'm raising them so that they can give me something in return. They can give me a product in return. It's kind of the same thing, the argument that people use for slavery, right? People said, well, you know what, these Africans in Africa, they're so savage, right? They're such savages. Let's give them a better life. Let's give them a Christian life. Let's bring them here to America. We'll treat them well, and we won't pay them. We won't do it, but we'll force labor upon them. But hey, at least they have a better life. At least they have religion or a good life. And so what? So what? Let's just use them as a product. And it's the same arguments that people made for humans. We're not making that because we're not chickens. We're not seeing the life of a chicken, and we're just using them as property.
I get that much, and that is a huge point. But is it actually like? If you were to eat an egg right now, like an egg sandwich, forget the bread. If you were to just eat like sunny side eggs, that would be breaking your veganism,
right? I wouldn't eat an egg
because it's morally wrong, not because it's necessarily an animal.
Well, I would say I wouldn't eat it because of the moral and the health part. Well, first, the health part. Let me clarify on the health part. Did you know that the USDA does not allow the egg industry to call eggs healthy, nutritious, safe, or even good for you? Wow. They're not allowed to advertise that they're safe.
Yeah.
Think about that. When people say, well, I eat eggs because they're good for me, they're not allowed to say that. Like when you look at advertising for eggs, what do they say? Incredible egg, right? Yeah. They don't say nutritious egg, healthy. You will never see an advertising for an egg that says it's healthy or it's good for you because they're not allowed to advertise that. And if they're not allowed to advertise, even by the USDA, which they get lobbied from, the USDA won't even let them. That's how bad it is.
Right.
So when people say, well, I eat eggs, well, why do you eat it? They're not good for you. They're not even safe for you. So that's one thing. That's the health act. They're full of cholesterol. They're full of a lot of things that we shouldn't even really be eating. But if you want to eat that, it's your choice. If you want to be unhealthy, I'm not gonna say you shouldn't drink alcohol because it's unhealthy. That's your choice. If you want to be unhealthy, that's your choice. But in terms of like the morality of why you shouldn't keep a chicken as for eggs is that I'm not saying that you, like, for example, if you found an egg somewhere randomly and you wanted to eat that egg, I'd be like, okay, go ahead, eat that egg. That's your business, and you're not harming a chicken. You just found the egg and you're doing. But the problem happens is that when you're raising chickens and you're looking at them as property, that you're not looking to them as like, oh, I want to take care of this cute chicken. You're looking at them and like, oh, I want chickens because I want to take their eggs from them, right? And the amount of calcium that the amount of chickens are naturally supposed to lay an egg once a month. And you know what an egg is? An egg is the period of a chicken. That's what you're eating.
Right.
It's supposed to be once a month. You're eating the period of a chicken.
Right.
I mean, people don't really think about that, but that's essentially what it is.
I had no idea about that.
Yeah, that's essentially what it is. Because I mean, if it's not fertilized, what is it? It's the period of a chicken.
Right.
And then you're eating that, and you're looking at the chicken as like a product that like, hey, I can get this egg from, instead of saying, oh, I'm gonna take care of the chicken and all these things like that. So what happens is that's how the industry started, right? Some guy was like, well, I'm gonna keep chickens and I'm gonna eat their eggs, and then the friends came and said, hey, well, can I buy some of your eggs from you? Oh, okay, I'll sell a few and then I'll keep for myself. And then what happens? You get more and more chickens, and then it becomes factory farming all over again, right?
Right.
So we say, look, just we don't need it. Why do you need it? You can get the same taste from you can make scrambled eggs out of tofu. You can make eggs out of this bean called mung bean, which you get the same consistency of egg, and it's healthier for you. It doesn't have cholesterol. It doesn't have any of the. You're not eating the period of a chicken. It's like.
It's that's a really good point. Yeah. Bottom line though, if it wasn't you and it was a different vegan, and they found an egg, and they wanted to eat it, and they didn't give a fuck if it was if it kept them, like, if it was health concerned or not, would it be breaking vegan?
I would say that as long as they had no intention, if they found the egg and they just wanted to eat it, I don't think it would be breaking veganism. Like even I would go even further. If you found a dead animal on the road and you wanted to like eat a dead animal that had died and you wanted to eat it, I would say that wouldn't be breaking veganism because you're not causing the suffering.
Okay.
Because veganism is kind of a little bit different from vegetarian. Like when you look at pure vegetarian, it's a plant-based diet, right? When people say, well, I'm vegetarian but I consume like dairy or eggs, that's because you're a lacto-ovo vegetarian. So if you consume dairy, you're a lacto-vegetarian. You consume eggs, you're a ovo-vegetarian. But if you consume eggs and dairy, you're a lacto-ovo-vegetarian. But if you're strictly a vegetarian is a strictly vegetable diet.
Right.
So you wouldn't, if you're vegetarian on a vegetable diet, you wouldn't consume meat. But veganism is more about like not causing harm to the animals, not causing this unintentional suffering, not not all these farming practices that are destroying the environment and all these things, and also destroying your health. But at the end of the day, if you're like, if you find something, you don't want to waste it, it's going to go to waste or something like that. Then if you want to eat that, that's, you know, you didn't cause the harm, right? You didn't. But the thing is that it's just still a slippery slope. But if you're going with this mindset, like, I'm gonna do this every time, it's like, it's still like, I don't know.
You're kind of being counterproductive.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line. It's like, but I mean, you're not doing it. I mean, you didn't, you know. But it's different from like going into a store. Like, I had a debate with this girl the other day, and she's like, well, when I buy chicken, I didn't cause the chicken to die, right? Yeah. But it's like I indirectly she's like, oh, I indirectly caused the chicken to die. I didn't directly purchase, like, I didn't say, hey, I want to kill that chicken. But you, like, still, like, the fact that you're buying the chicken, you're creating a demand for another chicken, right, to die. You know, you didn't cause that chicken to die, but by you buying that, you're saying, oh, I want another chicken. And the next time you buy another, you're saying, oh, I want another chicken. It's a domino effect. Yeah, you're still contributing to the suffering.
Yeah. I was just looking at a couple more of the pros and cons, just because I feel like you have been nailing all of the pros over here. You might have kind of covered this, but it says, vegan diets are lacking in some vital nutrients. Unfortunately, a diet that excludes all animal products does have some nutritional drawbacks. Omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B12, and folate, all of which are present in meat and dairy as key nutrients, and a vegan diet does lack. Over time, inadequate consumption of these can result in a host of problems, including loss of bone and muscle mass.
Well, like I said before, I mean, when people talk about like these nutrition deficiencies, like have you ever heard of someone with B12? I mean, there are some people who are B12 deficient, absolutely, but you can get B12 from like eating algae or eating certain things, and if you know, if one or two nutrients, I mean, you can get all the this is absolutely not true, because you can get all the nutrients that you need to live a healthy life on a vegan diet. But even if there are like maybe one or two or three nutrients that you can get, you can always take a supplement for it, right? Everybody's taking supplement, everybody's taking multivitamin, people are downing down protein shakes, but a vegan is like, oh, you can't get three or four nutrients, oh my god, you're going to be so deficient. Well, just take a supplement, right? Just take something to substitute, you know.
No, that's a good point. Again,
absolutely.
I'm not arguing with you.
I'm arguing with the person who wrote that.
And this might not even be a legitimate source. But Self.com, if you're listening right now, Dyno's kind of debunking you. So
yeah, I mean, people think about it like, I mean, these herbivores, cows, right? They eat grass all day, right?
Yeah.
Do you know, we're talking about these animals that are huge: oxes, deers, elephants, giraffes. The biggest land animals on earth are herbivores, right? Yeah. The strongest animals are herbivores, but yet they're just consuming like leaves and all these things. Like, why do we have so many kinds of vegetables at our disposal? But yet these animals cows are eating grass, and they're huge. They're like, you know, how many pounds is a grass? Like how many pounds is a cow? A lot. They're huge, right? Their oxes are huge.
Of course.
Gorillas are strong, right? And where are their protein? Where are their deficiencies? Where are their nutrient deficiencies? Right? It's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not there. They're not consuming even as even 10% of what we have access to. We have access to so many different, and that's what we're saying. We're not saying that, hey, you shouldn't consume these meat or any of these animal products. But the fact is that you have other options available to you. You don't have to do this. You can eat all the vegetables that are available to you from all over the world. You have it at your disposal.
Right.
Like, why would you cause this suffering, you know?
Of course.
For one or two nutrients that you can get from a vitamin supplement, you know, from algae or from whatever, from quinoa, from spirulina. You can get B12 from all of that. And we actually produce a B12 in our lower intestines too. But a lot of it is not absorbed because it's in our large intestines. Right. And it gets, like, you know, sent away. But our bacteria, our microbiome and our bacteria does produce B12, but doesn't get absorbed in adequate. That's what they're saying. They're saying adequate amounts. And it's like, you know, it's such a small amount. It's like,
sure.
You know, so that's what I'm saying about that.
I have another con for you. Relying on pulses for protein can bring on discomfort, but getting the most out of legume. I didn't really read these beforehand, so don't judge me. But getting the most out of legumes, pulses, and other alternative forms of protein require paying constant attention to combining them with the right grains to ensure proper nutrition, something that many Americans still find to do because it remains a certain amount of planning. Digesting alternate protein sources can also prove challenging to people who are not used to them. They can make you feel bloated. They can make your digestive tract feel off. Many people feel bad because of this as their system adjusts, and whoever wrote this fucked up the grammar.
So I mean, they're talking about combining, right? They're talking about combining certain foods, like, oh, well, certain grains you can't get all the protein from, right? And we talked about that.
Going back what you were saying earlier, exactly.
Yeah, you just eat a little bit more and stuff like that, and you combine certain foods. And honestly, there are some people who have, like, for example, like the fiber, or have bloating and stuff like that. But that's because, like, you've been eating meat all your life. You've been eating dairy all your life. So your microbiome is super, super important, right? And when you're consuming all these products from birth till, like, whatever age, 25, 30, or 18 years old, and you want to change to a vegan lifestyle, you have to, like, your body has to adjust, right? So when you're consuming a lot more fiber, a lot more carbohydrates, your bacteria that consumes meat and consumes dairy are going to be like, what the hell is going on here? Like, you're going to be craving certain products because of your microbiome and those certain bacteria that consume that. They're going to be asking you for that product. So it's just a matter of, like, being aware of, like, of the effects that it can have on you, and just slowly introducing. If you have a bloating effect, then eat foods with less fiber.
Right.
Eat more of another product that has less fiber and whatever else you need.
It's funny you say about, like, when you eat something, you kind of get addicted to it. Even, like, in the regular just meat eating world, I don't even know what to call it, because just carnivorism.
Carnism.
Carnism. I'll go through phases. Like, I exercise every day. I ride my bike to and from Astoria every day. So I get, like, 12 miles of exercise a day. But at the same point in time, after I work out, I'm fucking starving. And, I mean, obviously it'd be great to incorporate some of these different, healthier lifestyle choices into my regular diet. But, I mean, like, I'm not going to lie. Like, I'll go through a period of, like, a while where I don't eat, like, junk food, and then, like, for a week straight I might have, like, ice cream almost every night, and it's like I can't even control it a little bit.
Right.
Like, at some point I'll be like, all right, like, fucking stop, because you're getting fat, or, like, it just, you can feel it inside of you, like,
right,
the unhealthiness. Like,
it's actually your microbiome that's talking to your gut flora that's talking. Did you know that there's a link between your microbiome and your gut called the vagus nerve to your brain, right? So your gut is telling your brain, hey, like, I want this. So it's basically not your fault. It's, you have to change your microbiome and start changing the food that you feed it. So if you're feeding it certain kinds of food, you're gonna be craving that, especially when you're not consuming it. It's like, if like cigarettes, like you've been smoking cigarettes your whole life. If you stop, you're gonna be like, oh my god, I'm craving something else.
Yeah.
So
it's the same way. I don't mean to keep talking about myself, but when I was in college, I went away to college, and we had the dining hall, all you can eat meal plan. So there was all, like, the most, burgers, chicken nuggets, all this shit, where we would eat friggin' 3-4 times a day, plus crush, like, 2 or 3 sodas with it. You know what I mean? So, like, the freshman 15 isn't a lie, but once I guess I matured a little bit too, but I moved off campus, and, like, money was a little bit tighter, food was not as accessible, and I started to realize, like, I was exercising more too, but I started to realize, like, like, I can eat, like, healthier things, and it actually is surprisingly a little bit cheaper, and I'm feeling better about myself.
Rice being super cheap.
And just cutting out the soda alone, holy shit,
yeah,
dude,
definitely.
I was nearing 200 pounds. I'm back to a solid 165, like,
right.
And, like, I hardly drink. I had soda yesterday, so I'm already lying, but, like, I hardly drink soda, because I know how bad it is for you, and anytime I drink it now, I can feel, like, it
doesn't jive with
probably
you.
Not a good thing, but I can feel, like you were just saying, like, that communication, like, something in there is being like, dude, why are you doing this to me? You know what I mean? And, like, when I used to do it all the time, I never experienced that. I loved to do it,
because you were so accustomed to it.
Yeah, the same way, like, I'm not, like, a big alcohol drinker. I know how bad, like, beer is for you. I mean, like, it's full of sugar and whatever else, but like, beyond that, like, it's just, I mean, it's not. Yeah, it's just not good for you.
Alcohol is a toxin.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that alone kind of deterred me, because I was trying to actively live a better lifestyle. But, every time you think that you're at a point where, like, you're doing better, like, I'm doing the calisthenics every day, doing, like, 150 push-ups a day, doing my cardio, there's still people out there that can motivate you to live that much better and to take that much more, a better course of action to eat that much healthier, or, just a mindset of why you're doing that. You know what I mean? Right. So that's why I appreciate people like you, and I mean, like the book that you wrote. Yeah. So
I mean, like you were saying about like a lot of people, they have to eat a lot, they have to eat all these, but like honestly, I eat probably like once or twice a day, and like I'm full, and I have so much energy to use throughout the day, and it's because like I'm getting all my nutrients, and it's because it's bioavailable, right? When you're eating meat, like people say like, oh, meat has this much protein or this much nutrients, but that's like when it's fresh, right? When it's like straight cut off or at the source. But then you don't realize how far it has been traveled, how far it's been sitting there in your refrigerator, in the market refrigerator, and then you're cooking it, you're destroying the nutrients, and then you're putting that into your body, and then you have to suck out all the nutrients, and then your body has so much work. It's just such a huge toll that you're taking in such little nutrients from what it says it is, and your body is absorbing so little of that you have to consume so much to get just what your body is craving for, when you can get that from plants, and it's more bioavailable.
Of course.
Bioavailable for you, yeah. And when you talk about like exercise, I actually had a part of my book where I talk about how like dancing is actually one of the best exercises that you can do, because it's both physical, mental, and spiritual, right? It's
look at Zumba. Like people Zumba, fucking love Zumba because it's fun. You don't even realize you're working out.
Right, exactly.
For me, racquetball was my dancing, because like I loved doing it, and I didn't realize how active I was while I was doing it, and I was playing it every single day while I was in college. And between cutting out like the shitty food, I probably still was eating like Taco Bell or whatever else every once in a while, but like cutting out the soda and trying to be that much more conscious of what I was putting inside of myself, plus doing like that, moving around and getting the heart pumping, you realize how much better you feel, and like it just makes you want to take that next step to better yourself even more. You
don't realize how bad you are until you cut out that product.
Exactly.
Right? That's the thing.
Exactly. Like for me, like I didn't think that I was doing anything wrong, but one day I woke up and I'm like, God damn, like I don't look good, I don't feel good, like something's got to change. And once you make that initial change, you're like on a roll. And I mean, like I said too, like for me, when I exercise, like my brain is so much more, like I feel like so much more clear-headed, and that alone gives me like the motivation to want to like do good things. And I feel like if you exercise and you're a vegan, like I feel like you're that much more ahead of the game. But it seems like what you're saying, like you do like hike and whatever else, and,
I do. I think it's
but you don't overdo it. Just living this lifestyle alone you're already putting you that much more ahead of it, because you're pure in some sense.
Right. I think it's also too just like, I mean, some people can go to the gym and exercise, but it's also too like if you incorporate that activity into your lifestyle. For example, we were talking about the blue zones and how they live the longest. Most of them, they don't have gyms. They don't go to, they're in like rural areas and stuff like that, and they don't go to gyms, and their exercise is just being active. They go out and they're social, and they're moving around. They're working on farms. They're doing this. They're doing being active is part of their lifestyle. They go on walks with people. They have a lot of they're very spiritual. They have a purpose, a meaningfulness in their lives, and that's a huge part as well.
It affects your mental health. That's why.
Your mental health and your spiritual health, because being part of a community is so important. We're social animals, right?
Yeah.
So being part of a community is super important to maintaining a good, healthy lifestyle. Not just the mental side and the physical side. So the physical is like being active and all that stuff. But if you incorporate all that, the physical, the mental, and the spiritual. When I talk about spiritual, I mean, I don't essentially mean like with life after death or anything like that. When I mean spiritual, I'm talking about like community and being part of something bigger than yourself, bigger than just the individual, and realizing that, hey, you're not here by yourself. This is not like Earth wasn't made for you. We're all sharing this Earth, whether you're human, whether you're not, whether you're a non-human animal. Yeah. We're all together in this. We only have one Earth. So realizing that there's something, a communal thing with everybody, and when you realize that, hey, let me be more humble. Let me be more. Let me try to do something meaningful in my life, and let me be active, and let me be with more people, and let me be also healthy, because if I'm healthy, then I can help more people, and I can help myself, and I can help others, right?
Of course.
Because if you're healthy, if you're active, you're physical, you're smart, you're mentally stable, and you're emotionally stable, and all these things, you can help more people, and you can help yourself, and you can live a better life, and you can get the things that you want while also helping other people, and that's a spiritual aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think that a lot of people aren't really aware of this. I mean, the first step is kind of getting in touch with yourself and evaluating kind of where you're at. And not only that,
huge part.
but like researching, reading good
Reading the
books.
book.
You know what I mean?
Just having a conversation and realizing with other people and just realizing that, hey, like, animals also, like, they're also, like, maybe they may not be as intelligent as us, right? But what's the justification for doing what we do? Is it because we're more intelligent than them? But when we look at the core, at what makes this acceptable or not is whether animals can suffer. And we all, like, scientifically 100% animals can suffer, animals can feel pain, animals love each other and they love their own life, So I think that's what's at the core of veganism, and like just being real with yourself. If you can't see what happens, how your food is made, maybe you shouldn't be consuming them. I mean, do you have a problem seeing how greenhouses are grown, how vegetables are grown? I think no one has a problem with.
Of course not.
With a fast forward video of like a plant growing, right?
Yeah.
Or like just seeing things like that. No one has an issue with that, but you have an issue with showing kids like where their food comes from, right? But then you want to feed it to them, right? You want to give it to them, and you can't talk about veganism in front of kids. Like, oh, you can't talk about that to kids. Like, why not? Why can't you talk about where their food comes from? You're putting this in their body. And kids know about it. And I actually substitute teach. And I see kids all the time. And I teach them, and I teach in a classroom in public schools from K to 12. And I see how kids are and how they respond to, like, we teach them, we give them these books about animals, and we teach them morality and how treating each other with fairness and kindness and respect for each other. But yet, we tell them, hey, when you're older, you should pay for someone to kill an animal for you. Kill the animals the dogs and the cows and the pigs that taught you, hey, we should love each other and be kind to each other. But then we're paying someone to torture them, to rape them, to torture, to kill them eventually for what they can produce for us.
It's all a lie.
It's all a lie. I mean, honestly, It really is all a lie. And the thing is that it's just having a conversation with yourself. Like, is this what I believe in? It's not necessarily like this extreme. Like, people say veganism is so extreme. What about just reducing the amount that we produce, right? Reducing how much I consume. But it's like, how much is enough? Like, is one animal okay? Is a billion animals okay? I mean, we kill at least 56 billion land animals every year. Right? There's 7 billion people on the planet. 56 billion land animals and trillions of animals in the ocean. So it's like, like what's reductionism? Like, if someone said, well, hey, like let's only kill like 10 billion a year, is that okay? Or how much is okay?
Yeah, of course.
Why is veganism so extreme when, like, all we're saying is just like, you don't have to. Like, if you had to, it would be a different story. Maybe we wouldn't even be having this conversation, right?
Sure.
But do you have to like kill all these animals, or can you thrive on like just consuming plants? It's you can do that.
Exactly.
That's
Bottom line,
you can do it, right?
Yeah. As far as like, I read something else, but I'm not going to read it off of there.
Okay.
Because it just made me laugh. I feel like there's a lot of people out there. I don't want to say a lot of people, but when they say that they're vegan, they're really not informed. They're almost like a poser in a way, but it's kind of like hipster status. Like, I'm vegan, and I feel like if they kind of cross paths with someone like you and they tried to like check you on that, they wouldn't really know what they were actually talking about or why they were doing it, besides the morality factor.
Right.
Does that bother you at all? Like that?
Yeah, no. I don't,
there's those type of people out there
that definitely doesn't bother. As long as they're vegan, as long as they're doing it, I mean, they're doing something. I mean, a lot of people. I mean, that's the thing. Like, when you're vegan, I feel like a lot of people expect you to be like an expert. Like, you're supposed, like, when I went vegan, everyone was like, well, what about like our history, or like do you know about this kind of a nutrient? Like, you're just supposed to be like a specialist in everything, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a hard shoulder weight to carry on your shoulder, right? If you're going vegan, you're just like, well, you know what? I understand. I don't want to kill animals, and that's all you need to know. For some people, that's enough. Like, boom, that's it. Like, oh my God, I never realized that. Like, me eating a burger, a cow had to die for this burger.
Yeah.
And I was like that. I mean, I was like that for a part of my life, and like I ate burgers, and I was like, oh well, okay, that's what you're supposed to do. So when someone
society tells you to do that,
someone tells you to do that. Some people are just like, well, I don't need to know about like all the nutrition. I don't need to know about all the environmental aspects. I just know that like killing an animal to me doesn't feel right, and to me that's enough. Some people will be like, well, the environment, and they don't really care about animals, but they're like, damn, the environment is super, like, we're destroying the environment for this. So, like, that's enough for me. right? Some people do it for the health.
Of course.
Whatever reason you're doing it, you don't have to be an expert in veganism to be a vegan, right?
Of course.
You just have to, like, you know, okay, whether you're a poser or not, like, if you're not consuming animal products, that's cool. Like,
as long as you're doing that right thing,
Yeah.
that's all that really matters. It doesn't bother you in that sense.
Yeah, some people, like, they you know, they don't want to know everything. They don't want to know everything about vegan. They just want to live a normal life, but they don't want to consume this product, and that's fine with me. Like, you know, I don't necessarily think they're posers. I mean, if they don't consume animal products, then that's fine with me.
Right. No, and again, I'm not calling them posers. I come across people that, you know, have that, like, look down on you type of attitude.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's definitely, no.
And maybe I use the wrong terminology, but
they're condescending too sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
They're like, oh, I'm vegan and you're not. You should be like me. Or
Well,
something.
and my first response is, listen, I agree with what, like,
Right.
I agree with what you're doing. I'm not practicing it,
Right.
so I'm not practicing what you're preaching. But at the same point in time, I'm not saying you're wrong for doing it.
Right.
I'm saying I'm weak for not doing it. You know what I mean?
I don't know. Like, a lot of people, like, a lot of vegans will be like, well, you can't love animals and eat them too, right? That's like kind of one of the, like, the biggest things that people say. Like, oh, how can you can't love animals and then kill animals instead? And to me, I don't think that's true. Like, I think you can love animals and still eat them too, because, like, you're not making that connection, right? You're not making that connection where, like, well, you're killing, like, this is what's happening, right? For example, like, I loved animals. So, like, for me to say that you don't, like, I definitely love animals, but I was still buying and consuming these products. So I just think that there's something in psychology called the cognitive dissonance, where, like,
Yeah, of course.
yeah, where, like, you've been so, you're in this lifestyle, you're in this consuming the carnistic lifestyle, carnism, and you've been raised to do this thing, and you don't make the connection, right? Some people just don't make the connection, or some people do make the connections, but it's also hard to change, and it takes a gradual process, and some people change faster, some people don't. But I just think that, like, you shouldn't be judged, like, other vegans shouldn't be, like, looking down on other people because they're not vegan, because, like, this was you, like, you know, 2 weeks ago when you were eating meat, right? You were eating these products, and now all of a sudden you're, you know, a higher person, you know, looking down on other people, and that's not right. You know, you shouldn't be doing that.
Exactly.
You should be putting yourself into their shoes and being like, okay, well, you know, what do you need to know? How can I help you? Or not even help you, because that means that they need help or something like that. But just like, okay, well, what's your objection to having a conversation with somebody instead of, like, looking down upon them? I think we should just have conversations with them, because everyone is a good person, right? Whether you consume meat or animal products or not, a lot of people are good people, and they don't like what's going on. They don't like what's happening, but, you know, it's the society, the way we built society, where, like, when I go into New York and I walk out of here, I'm seeing animal products everywhere. I'm seeing, you know, chicken and hot
street meat.
I'm seeing, you know, animal dairy, pizza. So it's like, I'm not blaming anybody, because this is what you have. This is what your society has built upon. So I just think that, like, yeah.
I think that's the most funny thing is, not that it's funny, but the people that are that eat meat, and they'll get, like, Chinese food or something like that, and, you know, the common conception that, like, dogs and cats are used for Chinese food or whatever, but people are so against it because they're domesticated animals.
Absolutely, yeah.
But then you have all these, you know, wild animals that are being slaughtered and killed, like you said, millions or billions,
56 billion land animals
a year. I mean, like, it's it's hypocrisy to say, oh, you know, like, our dogs and cats, but really, like,
yeah, you can't. I would never eat a dog, but I would eat a cow instead,
exactly,
or a pig instead, right?
Exactly.
And it's like, yeah,
that's where I scratch my head, because I'm like, you know, like, you're getting Chinese food, just eat it and shut the fuck up.
Yeah, I mean, if meat is so good for you, it shouldn't matter where the meat comes from. If it comes from a dog or if it comes from a cow, right? It's
exactly.
It's meat. It's protein, right?
Exactly.
Well, okay, it's they cooked up a cat. Oh, I love cats. They're so cute. Right, but I mean, what about cows? Are they not cute? Like,
exactly.
And you say, well, the people will say, well, cows are domesticated. Well, dogs are domesticated as well, right? Well, they're pets. Oh, well, that's just a label you gave them. You
exactly.
called them a pet. You know, a pig could be a pet, right? A chicken could be a pet.
Exactly.
A cow could be a pet. Just because it's bigger doesn't mean it can't be a pet.
Exactly.
Yeah. So my thing is, yeah, absolutely. That's called speciesism, right? Where, like, we prioritize certain species over other species. Like, well, we say, well, we won't do this to this, but we'll do this to these species. This is okay.
Yeah.
And that's where it starts to fall apart. It's like, well, no, if you're saying meat is good for you, then it should come from all meat, right? All meat you should eat. You should eat milk from dogs. You should drink milk from rats. From mammals, right? And a lot of people don't realize that, like, milk comes from mothers, right? And they don't come from cows. They come from mammals. They come from female mammals that have given birth. And a lot of people don't realize that. Oh, milk. Well, if you milk the dog, would you still drink? That's disgusting. I would never drink milk from a dog. Yeah. But it's like, well, you're drinking milk from a cow. It's like, well, what's the difference? Well, I've been drinking it my whole life. Does that make
That's
it okay?
what everybody does.
It's what everybody does. Yeah. We've been doing this for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Like, we've been doing it such a long time. Is that justification to keep? We've been killing each other. We've been enslaved. We've been raping, torturing for thousands of years. Should we keep doing this?
Exactly.
Right.
Of course.
Just because we've been doing something for a long time, we need to rethink our way of life and do things what's practical today.
That's the problem with the society too. Is people just have this idea that there's this set of permanent, standards or rules that we have to live by.
What's right and wrong,
or that they think that they should live by. When it's like, listen, live for yourself, be more self-aware, and kind of explore and see what's right. Do your research.
Right.
Talk to people that are involved in these different, activities and lifestyles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, people are so much in their bubble that, like, not only are they against it, but they're afraid of it. You know what I mean? Like,
I think about social change, or like civil rights, or all these big movements that we had. And like, there's a famous whale hunter, that this guy hunts people who hunts whales. He's called Captain Paul Watson, and he has this interesting quote where he talks about, like, if you want to know where you stood on civil rights, don't ask yourself like where you stand on civil rights today. Ask yourself where you stand on animal rights today, right? Because it's easy to say, like, oh, I'm all for civil rights today, right? Because it's popular, right?
Yeah.
But like, where would you have stood on civil rights if you don't stand like on animal rights today? Like, they suffer, they feel all these things like that. When you look at Cesar Chavez, for example, he was a huge Mexican American who fought for rights of farmers back like a while ago, and he was a vegetarian because he saw that like how can I how can I consume animal products when they see that animals do suffer? He grew up on a farm. He was a farmer himself,
yeah.
And he saw, like, we cannot call ourselves, like, I cannot be a activist and still consume these products when I know that these animals suffer and these animals feel pain. So that's the thing that, like, a lot of people don't really question, like what's culture, what's like what they've been told to believe that is true, when in actuality it's like, is it really okay? And it's like, because we don't put ourselves in like the victims when we look at animals as property, and that's a big part.
It's funny. I actually did a documentary in college. I was taking a documentary class, and we had to just pick any random topic. And this girl that I was friends with lived up. I went to Plattsburgh, so it was like North Country area, and the town over, she had friends that owned a dairy farm. Now we went over there to do this documentary, and I'm thinking we're going to get to see, like, everything. They're like, basically, like, 75% of the places that they had within that farm, we weren't even able to go in there with the camera because of how awful I didn't even get to go in without the camera because I'm assuming it was so, like, horrible to look at. And, I mean, like, they had a slaughterhouse, this, that, and the third. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Why? Like, there's a quote that says, if all slaughterhouses were made from glass or glass slaughter, everyone would become vegetarian. Right, because if you can see what's going on, right? Like, it's like when you can't see it, it's like, oh man, I don't know. Don't show me the footage. I can't watch it. It puts me off my. Why would it put you off your food? If you're a carnivore, right? This is what you're saying. I'm a carnivore. I'm the omnivore. I'm designed to eat meat. I should eat meat. But yeah, you don't. Like, when you see an animal being killed, it puts you off your food.
I'm telling you, man. When I saw that Tyson chicken video with the pigs being tortured, that checked me to another level where I was just like, should I really be doing this? And it wasn't even about, like, how I feel. It was just like, I feel like a piece of shit for supporting something that's,
Yeah, that's the thing that, like, most people are good people. Like, they don't like none of this stuff to happen, but they think that, what can I do? I'm one person. Like, how am I going to change? But that's what every vegan has been saying, and look how things are changing, right?
That is one of the biggest things I always hear. You're one person. You're not going to do anything.
It's never going to change. Like,
exactly.
And it's true. I mean, and that's not true. But like, we still have war. We still have slavery. In 2019, there's still modern day slave. There's sex trafficking. There's all these horrible things that are happening. But you're not part of it. We're not part of it. We're not paying for any of this stuff. I mean, there's people that are, but like, we don't have to pay for any of this stuff, right?
Of course.
We don't have to be a part of like these animal tortures. Well, what can I do? Well, you don't have to pay for it. And every person that has said, well, you know what, I'm not going to be part of it, is the reason why Burger King is creating a vegan burger, why all these Beyond Meat just launched their IPO and they doubled in stock, and because people are saying, well, you know, plant-based burgers or plant-based products are the way to go, you know, because people are asking, people are demanding, people are like, I don't want to buy this stuff anymore. I don't want to buy dairy milk. I don't want to buy all these things. So all these one people, if they would have been like, oh, I'm just one person, would we have all these products today? No, probably not.
There'd be nothing.
Right,
yeah.
Because if there's no one buying it, there's no one going to be able to supply it.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing in reverse, right? If no one's buying vegan products, then they're not going to sell it, right? But if there's no one buying meat, if there's no one buying chicken, then they're not going to sell it.
It's going to go out of business.
They're going to go out of business, and that's what's happening. That's why the government had to come in and subsidize them. But
of course,
if people say, hey, I'm not going to buy this anymore, you know, like, what do you think is going to happen? These industries are going to start having to change. And people get, one of the biggest things we get is like job loss, right? Well, you know, if we don't buy these products, then what about the farmers? You know, these skills aren't transferable. They're farmers. I mean, they can transfer, they can grow vegetables just the same, right? What about slaughterhouse workers, right? They can't. My question would be like, well, if you're concerned with job loss because of animals, well, are you anti-peace then, right?
Yeah.
For example, like, let's say today all the world leaders met and said, hey, you know, we've been killing each other for so long. Let's just stop. Let's stop killing each other. Let's declare world peace. But you would be like, no, you can't declare world peace because what about all the jobs lost from warfare, right? Would you be against world peace because it would reduce the amount of jobs? Think about all the bomb makers. Think about all the construction workers who rebuild cities from after the bombs are being. All these jobs would be lost because of peace. So are you against peace because, you know, all the jobs lost?
Yeah.
So that's the thing where we're saying that veganism is about peace, right? It's about peace for animals, let them live their life. And if it creates job loss, then it creates job loss. I mean, slavery was the same thing. The economy went to hell because of when the slaves were free. They were like, oh man, like I spent so much money on buying a slave, and who's gonna pay the cotton for me now, right?
Yeah.
So there was a huge thing, but I think we would all agree that ending slavery was a good thing, even if it created some job loss.
Sure.
And the same thing for animals. I think stopping the animal holocaust or whatever is going on is a good thing, even if it might create a little bit of disturbance, but eventually we'll be better for it. We will recoup. You know, we don't have an elevator doorman who pushes a button for you. We don't have a cop in the street signaling cars. We have traffic lights, right? What about their jobs? They lost their jobs too, right?
Of course.
But what happens if society changes and we create new jobs and we do new things?
Can't just blame it on the field itself. I just, if anything, I kind of want to wrap this up because we've been going for about 2 hours. Can you tell people where they can get your book?
Yeah.
First off, name the book.
The book is called The Vegan Handbook, and you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Nobles, and it will be soon available on the Google Play Store.
Awesome. And beyond that, can you just give people your contact information as far as your Instagram and where, you know, how they can reach you basically? Yeah.
Well, my Instagram is kai.dyno. That's my handle. Or you can reach me at dynokai@gmail.com. And my website will be up soon, theveganhandbook.com.
Beautiful. Yo, thank you so much for coming in here today. I learned so much. I definitely am, teetering towards the opposite side now, towards veganism as opposed to continuing this meat-eating lifestyle. Just because
there's a lot more in the book, too.
Yeah, man, and I definitely, I got to buy a copy myself, but as far as...
That's your copy right there.
Oh, okay, boom. Yeah, no, I'm definitely going to read this because now you've sparked my interest, and...
all I'm asking for is people to just to look into it, have an open conversation, have an honest conversation, and just like look into it and see if it aligns with what you believe, with what your morals are, with what your values are. And if it does, then you should at least start it, at least try it, and see how it works for you.
Definitely. All right, man. Yo, thank you so much for coming in here, guys. Kai Dyno, KAI.DYNO. Go follow him on Instagram. Also check his book out, The Vegan Hemp Handbook.
The Vegan Handbook. And hemp is health.
I will not stop fucking that up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of like a play on words, hemp. Yeah. But it's about health. It's about the environment. It's about morality, and it's about being practical.
Awesome. I love it. I'm gonna read it, and I will report back. I also just released a website, StillwaggonSymposium.com. Want to give a shout out to my boy in the control room, Eric. He's always hooking me up, and I'm never giving him a shout-out, so thank you, Eric, for all that you do, always. Thank you, Kai, for coming in here. And all right, guys, we'll see you next time on the Stillwaggon Symposium. Take care now.